All Communications provides equal opportunities for all legally qualified political candidates in accordance with FCC regulations. If you are a candidate for public office and would like to request equal time regarding content that has aired, please contact our station directly. We will be happy to work with you to schedule appropriate airtime. For more information, please reach out to the station office. 860-456-1111.
Welcome to the October 2nd episode of Right Now with Chris Reddy, Mike DeSaulniers, and Curtis Eller. We are one host short this afternoon. Mike will be returning with us next week, but I do have in studio Curtis Eller with me. And we have some local political news that we're going to cover in our first segment this afternoon on 1400 AM and 95.3 AM, 95.3 FM WILI. We had a budget referendum on September 30th this week. Curtis, you want to give us a little bit of a wrap up on what happened on Tuesday?
That's right, Tuesday. That's the big news of the week. We had our Windham's budget referendum. That was September 30th, and the results are in. The Board of Ed and town general government budgets both passed. We're going to talk about what that means for your taxes, how we got here as a town with this referendum process that a lot of people had questions about this year. We're going to talk about how we as a town can do better. And we're going to make time for a big thank you to all of the volunteers and poll workers that made our referendum possible, because let me tell you how elections and referendums work in Connecticut. Now, you having the state focus know that the constant changes that are going on with our voting process here, our election processes here, and the way that our registrar's office keeps up, the way that our poll workers and volunteers adapt. We're just so grateful. So thank you to all of our volunteers and poll workers that made the referendum possible. Okay, so Board of Education and town general government budgets. Those were the last two for us to vote on as a town. The Board of Education and town general government budgets were voted down in referendum initially on May 20th of this year. We saw a very strong turnout at the May 20th election, and I'm just really proud of us as a community. Congratulations to Windham, because the results are in from our Registrars of Voters office. Our May 20th referendum had the highest turnout for a budget referendum since 2015.
That's great.
I know, it's fantastic, right? We saw a lot of new voters coming out specifically for the referendum. Can you believe that was the motivation for some first-time voters? The first time they've ever come to the polls as adults was for a town budget referendum?
That is really surprising, because generally those are the elections that get overlooked and have very low turnout, and you have a couple of hundred people that are making a decision for a town, on its annual budget.
Not this year.
Yeah, to see that is exciting, and hopefully that is something that continues where we again, see more participation, because really that is, one of the things that's most important, these local elections. These are the elections that really do make those day-to-day changes in your life. The greatest impact on your wallet, on your family's budget, are these local elections that generally, like I said, are fairly low turnout. How was it on this Tuesday compared to May?
Oh, I'm really glad you asked, because your two co-hosts here, Mike DeSaunia and myself, Curtis Eller, we both worked the polls at both referendums this year. We were really, really happy and motivated to go ahead and help out and make sure that this referendum was a success. Yes, we did see a return more to normal at this referendum in terms of turnout. Roughly 10% turnout at the polls of our roughly 10,000 registered voters. About 1,000 turned out. Just under 10% of our voters turned out for this one. And we're going to take time to talk about why. What was the motivation or lack of motivation for people to turn out? What would make people who back in May were so motivated to come out go ahead and decide to stay home?
I'm going to tell you that I've noticed that as a pattern over the past couple of years in some of the other towns within our senatorial district. And what I've seen is that you do get a generally better turnout on a first referendum vote as opposed to subsequent votes. And in general, you see a slight drop off. I think some of this is because people initially come out, they vote no. There is a reworking of the budget, and a lot of people are just kind of in that frame of mind that they want to see a little bit of improvement in those numbers. So if it is, an improvement that is generally favoring people that are looking to spend conservatively with the town budgets, then usually that's one of the factors that will get them out initially. And after those numbers have been reworked, you generally have a little bit of a fall off with the participation from voters on subsequent referendums. And it sounds like that's something that happened again this cycle with the May referendum vote and then the September 30th vote.
That's right. We did have a response by our elected officials. The school side, the Board of Ed, ended up going to referendum back in May, looking for about a 1.7% increase on their side. Mm-hmm. The town was trying to come in flat, roughly flat. I think when you put all the numbers together, the town general government budget that was put out by the town council back in May was about $30,000 under last year, so we can call that roughly flat.
Yeah.
And the voters spoke loud and clear. Both the Board of Ed and actually the general government budgets went down. They were both voted down, and the town government did respond. Our elected officials did respond. Board of Ed did do the hard work to put in a flat budget, the same as last year, roughly $52 million budget. Again, the same as last year, and strangely, town general government budget, which is the purview of the town council on the first round. A Board of Finance gets to edit it on the second round. The Board of Finance owns the budget after the first round of voting, the first referendum. Decided to keep it flat. So there was a lot of concern and uncertainty about whether or not voters would go ahead and support it. But it was a narrow victory for the yes vote. Roughly 25 votes to yes on both the Board of Education and town general government budgets. I think that some voters certainly were just looking to see a 0% increase, and that was certainly part of the response. But we do have to acknowledge there were some other reasons why people may not have turned out. The rumor mill and what some people would call misinformation, that runs strong in town politics. I'm sure you've seen it, Chris.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that really is a very close vote for this referendum to pass. You're looking at 25 votes out of 1,000 participants. It's a swing of almost 49 to 51. You're looking at
roughly 2%. Two and change percent at that point.
So this obviously was still a significant issue to many people, that they felt that that the budget could be reworked a little bit more. It's definitely a clear yes to support the budgets, but that's very close on a second round where you're looking at less than 2% margin that it passed by. So, I think that there's still a lot of people who probably woke up yesterday morning and weren't too happy to hear that it had passed. Clearly, there's a lot of people that still felt that no was the vote that they wanted to cast. So it's interesting to see that.
Well, when you talk about how close the vote was, when you talk about 2 and change percent between the yeses and the nos, little tiny rumors in the town, little moves to maybe dampen turnout. They can make a difference, and we did see some what some sides would call misinformation out there, and I'm happy to talk about that and clear that up here on the air today. There was a theory that went around that was very strong that has been pushed by one side that was strongly voiced. The idea that if the voters vote no on the first referendum, that automatically the budget goes through at the level of last year. That is false. That is an option that is allowable under our town charter and state statutes.
Okay, that's what I was
but
just gonna ask you. Yeah.
the idea that it is an automatic process is misinformation, and perhaps made some people think, why should I bother coming out to vote? The fact that the town council, which again has permission under our town charter and state statute to set the mill rate, and set the mill rate they did at last year's level, also led some people to feel, what's the point of coming out to vote?
Sure.
I said no back in May. They decided to set the mill rate at last year. It doesn't matter that I'm trying to communicate that I want my tax bills to lower. Town council didn't listen to me.
Well, I think one other big contributing factor there is the revaluation that did happen in 2023.
Yes.
Do you want to comment on that?
It's important because we're talking about people's sentiments, but we're talking about voter sentiments and why turnout was so strong back in our initial budget referendum to vote both the Board of Ed and town general governments down. And you can't really talk about it this way that we're doing, asserting that voters were upset, asserting that voters were angry and had a clear message without talking a little bit about the history. And the history starts last year. Now, last year, was still this same town council. We have the same town council every 2 years. That's our new system. Listeners, I know sometimes it's confusing because this town changes its charter as often as it possibly can. So some of us don't always keep up. But yes, our town council does change over, the full council every 2 years now. That was part of our latest charter change. So last year, same council, but a different town manager. We're up on a reval year. As most of us know, and most of our listeners, I think, probably pay taxes on their car or on their personal property, on their real estate. Every once in a while, in a certain interval, these towns have to reevaluate the value of the taxable property in their town. Last year, it came up for Windham, and we decided to go forth with a revaluation. And we all know the situation with real estate property values in Connecticut post-COVID. Man, oh man. I don't know if we've gone on Zillow.com lately to look for houses, but the real estate values have been persistently high. And what we saw was across the board, our grand list going up hugely, 40 some odd percent. Now, in town, that was celebrated. 40 some odd percent increase in our grand list. That's all of our taxable property. Now, we didn't get into that we should compare ourselves to other towns, and other towns in our region, comparable communities went up closer to 60%.
Yeah.
It's important that we realize that when we're talking about town budgets and we're talking about competing for trained municipal employees, when we're talking about competing for services or goods, something as simple as the asphalt for our roads, we are competing with other towns here. That is the nature of how things work. So if our grand list and our taxable property is going up 40%, but our surrounding communities, their grand lists are going up by 60%, we're actually falling behind.
Yeah.
But in town, it was treated like a victory, 40% grand list increase. Oh, wonderful. The proposed budget by the former town manager went up substantially, but through the miracle of the reval, our mill rate actually went down. Now, the way this was communicated to voters last year is that, yes, we know that your property's value went up. You can see it on your property card at the town hall or by logging into the town website. But because the mill rate went down, the line from the town council, the line from the former town manager's office was that your tax increase would be minimal. The word was minimal. You can see that on our recorded Zoom town council meetings. You can see it during the budget vote. You can see it in the minutes of Board of Finance and town council meetings. It's there in writing. They told the public that our tax increases would be minimal.
I think that was kind of a statement that was being made around a lot last year.
Oh, yes.
Following these revaluations, there was other towns that I, spoke to residents who had similar experiences where the revaluation really was so significant that there was a substantial increase in their property taxes that they noticed, despite what any local town council was doing to try and establish a mill rate that showed a decrease there. It was many of the towns across this area that were affected similarly to Windham. I did hear a lot of complaints from more the villages of Windham that they had very substantial increases noted in property taxes following the revaluation. And you're correct that following COVID, we really saw that spike in home prices across eastern Connecticut. And to give you one example, the revaluation that happened in my hometown was greatly affected by one singular property that sold in town. We had so few actual real estate transactions for the year that a very small number of residences can greatly affect that revaluation. And that's what happened in one particular type of house in Scotland was the one that saw the greatest property tax increase based on that. So I think that that's something that's really happened regionally.
Yes.
And, I think that also when you look at real estate, the market across the country, New England has always been kind of shielded in like a bubble from a real estate perspective where we haven't seen huge issues with foreclosures like some other areas of the country have. I think it's unique here, but definitely this revaluation that happened in the past couple of years for many of these towns are ones that kind of set, like you said, into motion things that now are going to be affecting us in our taxes for the next few fiscal cycles and years that we need to be very cautious of.
So let's talk about why that lack of transparency, being told by your town officials, by your elected officials, that your tax increase would be minimal, is so detrimental. And why you need elected officials that are doing the homework, that are looking beyond the spin of whoever's job it is to craft the budget, to be able to give real, honest, sober information to your taxpayers so that they can make a good decision. Being told and believing, many of these people, many of these elected officials, I honestly believe were being sincere when they were saying they believed that the increase would be minimal. You have to look into the details. You have to understand as an elected official, when you're in Windham and you're a town council member, and your most important role as a town council member is crafting a budget and communicating it to your constituents. You have to understand how property valuations work, how reval works, what the mill rate and the property valuation means together towards a person's tax bill and how that's going to impact them. Because when you look at revals, it is a very detailed property by property reassessment of the value of each property. So the big picture is, across the board in Windham last year, roughly 40% increase in the grand list, the total taxable property. But what does that hide? If you own a single family home in Windham, your reval, the taxable value of your property, that's your assessment of your property, went up in the neighborhood of 50%. If you own commercial property in Windham, depending on the type of commercial property, you went down a little or down a lot in valuation. These are long-term trends. This is nothing unique to Windham or Connecticut. People buy their stuff on Amazon. They would go online, eBay. They're not buying stuff in the... First it was the small neighborhood stores, the downtown stores. Now Even the big box stores have to worry. We see bankruptcies of big names like Christmas Tree Shops and Big Lots, and there are many other even big box stores affected. But again, in Windham, you have to understand as an elected official what reval means, how its relationship with the mill rate is going to affect your taxpayers, your constituents, the people that actually live in your community. Single-family homes, roughly 50% increase in their assessed value. Commercial, down across the board. But here's what's so important and unique about Windham versus some of our other surrounding communities. It's our density. So many people in Willimantic, the Willimantic borough of our town, they live in multifamily houses. So many people out in the Windhams live in mobile home parks.
Right.
The 3-family homes and mobile homes were the number 1 and number 2 types of property to have the greatest rate of increase those last reval. And think about it, it makes sense, right? Property is getting more expensive across the board for real estate, for a home. So the minimum viable home, that 1-bedroom apartment in a 3-family house, or that nice single wide trailer, that thing that counts as a home, that's still a nice stable place to live, that might be on the lower end of the economic scale, that is going to be more attractive to more and more people now. More and more people, because of the cost of living, are being pushed to the bottom, and there's more competition for the same number of units of that minimum viable housing. It's just common sense, and anyone that looked into that reval, it's a very transparent document. We have a great assessor's office here in Windham. All of that information was available to our elected officials before they made the choice last year to vote on their town budget. And all of them had the opportunity to do the math and see who would be impacted, so that we could give an honest, impactful assessment, so that our constituents could make an educated decision on whether or not they were going to support the budget. But almost across the board, there were a few lone voices. Tony Fantoli on the town council, as a fantastic Republican member, 13 years serving on our town council, was sounding the alarm. But so few others were. You have to understand how math works if you're a town council member. It's a simple multiplication problem. The assessed value of your property times your mill rate is your tax bill.
Yes.
If the proportion that your assessed value goes up is greater than the mill rate goes down, your taxes are going up.
Right.
And if that number is more than the rate of inflation, that's a significant dent in your pocketbook.
Absolutely, and that's something that we've been dealing with for decades here in Connecticut. I've said it over and over again. Of all the problems Connecticut has, its biggest issue is affordability.
Yes.
We're now getting to the point where people are fleeing the state because of the crushing economic blows we suffer between property taxes, utility costs, highest insurance in the country, cost of living, all these factors. When you look at us being at the top of all those bad lists, and then on top of it have a very heavily regulated state that is not attractive to businesses, we're in for this type of increase over and over and over again. We've had pretty much a flat population. One of the things that I loved last year as I was presenting myself during my campaign was a piece of data that showed that in the past 40 years, our population has stayed virtually flat in Connecticut, 3.6 million people. Our state appropriated spending has gone up in that same amount of time by almost 300%. That's above any other financial indicator that would show that we're making good legislative decisions from a financial standpoint. This trend continues all throughout the state and has been a pervasive problem in Connecticut for a long time.
Absolutely. And when you look at Windham, when you get out there as elected officials like Mike and I are, we talk to our constituents and we say, what attracted you? Why did you choose Windham as your place to live? It's because we used to be a little island. So many people were attracted to our town because it's a place where you could live affordably in a beautiful place with a great community. And it unfortunately changes like this to our tax rate by our elected officials without understanding the impacts has really changed the reasons why people decide to live or not live in Windham.
All right, we're heading up to our first break here for our first segment, and we will be back in just a couple of minutes at 1400 AM, 95.3 FM, WILI.
Welcome back. You're listening to Right Now on WILI, simulcasting on 1400 AM and 95.3 FM. You're here with Chris Reddy and Curtis Ayler, and we are brought to you by Windham Industries, building strong foundations for tomorrow. Chris, we are sitting here talking about the results of the big news this week, the referendums that passed here in the town of Windham, both the Board of Ed and town general government budget votes. They passed. We are going into this fiscal year with a flat mill rate. It's 0% increases across the board. And we're talking about the impacts of our budget, how we got here, how we compare to the rest of the state of Connecticut, and how we believe Windham can move forward, how we can do better.
Excellent. One thing that I want you to kind of explain to us is what your vision is moving forward. You're obviously running again for town council coming up. What is the general feeling from Republicans in town on how we can move forward with budgets in the future?
I'm really glad you asked, because we, as a Republican Party here in the town of Windham, we heard our voters, because, man, when we go to knock on doors, we learned a lot about how they felt about last year's tax increases, how it affects their quality of life and ability to keep living in our community. The Republican Party here in town has listened to the voters, and by going door to door and heard them speak loud and clear at the last budget referendum, May 20th, sending down the Board of Education and town general government budgets strongly, with the biggest turnout in a budget referendum in this town since 2015. So we've listened, we've learned, and this is how our party's moving forward. We see a real opportunity here by working at the last budget referendums. We saw a lot of new voters turn out, voting for the first time in their adult life in a town budget referendum. And a lot of those new voters were Republicans, new Republicans. That's a trend we've seen in this town. Voter registration for Republicans has been trending up for years now. Democratic registration has been falling. We also see that people are really motivated by what they view as their out of control budgets, particularly after last year's increase. I don't know if I mentioned this fact. Across the board, 28% increase in your tax bill for residential property owners here in town.
That hurts.
Oh, that hurts big. That's what people were faced with last year. That was on the net, 28%. If you're a property owner here, you own your home in Windham, that's what we were looking at. And yeah, the voters are motivated. So are we as a Republican Party. This is the first time in my adult memory, Chris, that the Republican Party is making moves. We see these new voters being motivated by budgets. We have responded. This is the first time in my adult memory that we are running enough candidates to fully take the majority on the town council. We feel like we can do it. We feel like we've got a great mayoral candidate. I really hope we can get her on this show. Haley DeSaulnier, she's 19 years old. She has no agenda. She has no interests in property politics here in town. She's just a person that loves this community, has been involved strongly, and honestly, for a 19-year-old, this lady is a prodigy. I am so happy to be running with her. I am so happy to be on a team of so many new faces people that are new to politics but not new to our community. And we see a pathway with these new voters. We see a pathway with how people have been turning out for these referendums, and we want to take the council because we think we can do better. We understand everyone's priorities. We want a town that's beautiful, affordable, and safe.
Yeah.
We want good schools. We want good roads. We want to be proud of the town we live in, and we want to be able to afford to stay. That's where we're all at, and we have gone out on a search unprecedented for any party that I know of for recruiting new candidates. We reached out on Facebook. We reached out at fundraisers across town. We even did an open house training for candidates. We called it a candidate boot camp.
Yep.
And we didn't ask that you be a Republican. We didn't ask that you be a Democrat. We just wanted someone new to understand the process and know how it works, because that's what we need. We need fresh faces.
I agree with that, absolutely, and I think that's fantastic that you're able to field a full complement of candidates for all of the different seats in Windham. That's something that across Connecticut has been an issue, where one-party rule has been just so common for so long here in Connecticut that there are many seats that go uncontested, and that's unacceptable. If we're going to stick with this two-party system where we have candidates that we're going to support through our town committees, we need to make sure those town committees are focused and committed to make sure that they have the ability to put forth a candidate for every one of these seats. That's great that you guys have done that.
Yeah, we really see that from voters. We see people coming up to us in the streets and talking about why can't they have a town council that cares about their pocketbook, that cares about their budgets. They want to know a town council that's engaged and understands the issues that are important to them, and then the quality of life that they have for living in their town. And we, as a Republican Party, we're ready to do it. We're ready to take the job seriously. We're talking about people that have deep roots in this community. I really hope we can get, I mean, there's so many of them. I hope we can get them all on the show before November. I really hope they can fit in. But we have got two right on the show now. Myself, Curtis Ayler, and Mike DeSonia, both running for town council in the town of Windham. I'm running for the town-wide seat. That means that I will be representing the entire town of Windham, all of the Windham villages, as well as Willimantic. Mike will be running to represent the Windham villages. So we're really hoping that you come out to support us, our mayoral candidate, Haley DeSonia, and the entire Republican team. We're looking to take back the town council, really take a careful look at our budget, making important decisions for our community to keep our community beautiful, affordable, and safe.
That's great. We were talking just a second ago about Haley, and I wanted to come back to this seat. And I really understood what Mike had told me a couple weeks ago, where he said that this position of mayor is really a ceremonial position.
Explicitly.
Yeah, and it really is one where, I think that Haley's an excellent representative. She's been very successful in her own right, even though she's 19 years old. She, I think, does bring forth a really good option for you in this role as mayor of Willimantic. So I wish her the best of luck in this upcoming election.
Let's go, Haley.
Along with you and Mike. Wish you guys the best. We do have plans for some future episodes coming up where we will have some local politicians on to talk about some of the issues that they feel are most concerning to them and the constituents they're talking to. I hope that you will join us in the next couple of weeks for that. We are just about a month away from the November elections, so we'll be busy for these next couple of weeks on our episodes from 3 to 4 p.m. on Thursdays. Do you have anything else that you want to bring up about this past September 30th referendum before we move on to another topic here for the last little segment of our show?
And I honestly, I could take up the rest of the show saying this, but I am so grateful to our registrars of voters. I'm so grateful to our poll workers and volunteers. Until I got involved in politics here in this town, and until I actually dipped in and started to volunteer at the polls myself, I had no idea how much hard work goes into running an election. How many people, the long days. I'm talking about for this referendum, 5:15 in the morning to 9:15 at night. These people are doing God's work to make sure that our community is being representative and our voices are being heard. And thank you so much to our quality registrars of voters, both Lewis and Kimberly. Now, this isn't a Republican or a Democrat thing. I'm so grateful for the work that you do, because the changes that the state has continued to force down on towns, it feels like yearly changes on how we have to run our polls, and our two registrars are doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much. Again, I could speak all night about how great our poll workers, our registrars of voters, and our volunteers were. Thank you for making sure that our voters were heard.
Yeah, and it really does take a commitment from these people to ensure integrity in our election process. I agree with you 100% that these people do not get the credit they deserve, especially since we've instituted early voting, which means now you are spending literally 2 weeks manning polling locations leading up to these elections.
Morning to night.
Yep, it's
no breaks, weekends, days, rain or shine.
For what is very much a part-time position, has now suddenly taken on a very significant role in those times around our elections, where they're very busy, and we all want to have secure elections. We want to have faith in our election process, and that comes with a price that these people pay by spending a lot of time, working at the polls and ensuring that we do have the best system possible for determining how people vote.
But hey, it's not all local news. I would be remiss sitting in a room with an expert on state government issues if I didn't ask you, Chris, what's going on statewide. I've heard some. This is an interesting one that you've posed to me. I don't know how I should feel about it. Should I be worried about what I'm hearing on our state's trees?
Well, yes. This is something that actually I'm glad that you brought up. We had talked about this just as we were starting this afternoon, and I just want to ask you: this is the time of year. You've been out raking leaves or blowing leaves yet, cleaning up for fall?
Absolutely. I mean, those two last rainstorms we've had. Whoa! I mean, I thought I was down in Georgia again with the way this rain was coming down, inches per minute. Yep. So I've already been out raking these up. What about you?
Well, the concern that I have with this is, yes, I've started doing this, but this is something that now for months I've noticed on my property, and in fact, for years, it's just something that I started to look at. One of our most prominent tree species in Connecticut is now under attack from an invasive species. I'll describe this in just 1 second, but first let me tell you about the American beech tree. Definitely one of the most significant hardwood tree species that we have in New England. You go back to the 1800s, the early 1900s, this was one of the hardwood trees that was commonly used for furniture building. It was something that was a very important component of early New England. What's happened to beech trees since the early 1900s, they've been affected by one disease that many people are familiar with. It's called a beech bark disease.
Beech bark disease.
Yep, and it was caused by a specific insect that's invasive. It's actually a beech scale insect that was an invasive species. It feeds on the sap of the tree, but in doing that, it creates cracks in the bark that then allow a native fungus to infect the tree. Something that beech trees have been affected by for more than 100 years. What's happened since 2012, and specifically in Connecticut since 2019, is another disease that's called beech leaf disease. This is caused by a microscopic roundworm. It's officially known as a foliar nematode. And by all indications, this is another invasive species. It was first recognized in Ohio in 2012. First recognized in Connecticut in 2019. And the reason that I've been very interested in this is because I have some huge beech trees on my property. These are trees that are 5 feet in diameter and of a circumference of 12, 15 feet.
Wow.
Just massive trees. And I've noticed the kind of early defoliation that's happening every single year with these. So I started doing some research and found out that this foliar nematode, this very small microscopic roundworm, is causing this beech leaf disease. And the unfortunate thing is that the progression and not only of the spread of the nematode, but also the progression of the disease that it causes is so significant that by all investigation from not only the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, but many other universities across New England, we could almost guarantee that within the next decade, virtually every American beech tree in the East Coast is going to be affected by this beech leaf disease, and it has such a high mortality rate that this is going to, really cause a disruption in our forests.
Oh, no.
In many places, like there's parts of New Hampshire where the significance of the American beech tree in the forest is to the rate of about 30 to 40% of the forest. Some of the spots in western Massachusetts, you're looking at 11 to 15% of the forest or these particular tree that is simply not going to survive the progression of this disease.
Now, and that's terrible because when you talk about Connecticut, when you talk about New England, but specifically here in Connecticut, it feels like it's just been an onslaught. When I was a kid, the big news was the birch blight.
Yep.
And then, as a young man, we all know about the ash blight, the ash borer beetles.
Yep, the ash borers, the emerald ash borers,
and how much state resources have gone into making sure that you're clear cutting these ash trees before the beetles get in there and create a hazardous situation. And then, of course,
well, there's other ones. Dutch elm disease was another big one.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was another one that was back in 80s and 90s. We're really concerned about this one particularly. It is the rapid spread that is concerning. And part of this is because of the life cycle of the foliar nematode, not only being carried by insects and by birds, but also this is a concern because it could potentially be aerosolized in water droplets from rain and carried by the wind. If you look at if you kind of extrapolate how it has progressed from Ohio in that kind of northeasterly direction, you can see that that's how the predominant winds blow
So it's
on
following
the
the
East
wind
Coast.
current.
So there is some tradition, and they're concerned about that is what's causing this really rapid progression of spread and then disease process in these trees. Now, there are a few things that can be done to treat this. They are finding some things now. Unfortunately, the three main treatments, two of them can only be applied by someone who is a licensed individual with the DEP for pesticides and insecticides. The only one that's really available to the public is a potassium phosphate, which can help treat the progression of the disease in these trees, but it's not actually a solution. And then when you look at the fact that this is such a prominent tree in our forests, it's going to be very, very difficult to even be able to treat the number of trees that we have with any type of significant results that are present. But one thing that I want to try and also bring out is that we're not just talking about a species of prominent tree that is affected by the loss of the American beech. This is a tree that's also highly significant and very important to a number of our, number of species in our wildlife habitat, particularly wild turkeys, white-tailed deer, gray squirrels, and the one that has the most significant impact on one of our species is the black bear. Because of the beech nut and its nutrient content, the number of calories per weight of a beech nut as opposed to like an acorn, it is significantly higher in fat, significantly higher in protein, carbohydrates, and calories, where this single beech nut from the beech tree is so important and so vital to pregnant black bears that it can actually have a direct effect on the following year's cubs. Right now is the time of year where these black bears are going through something that's called hyperphagia, which is that excessive eating trying to build up fat reserves in stores. Even though black bears don't truly hibernate, they will den up.
I was so upset to hear that was a myth.
Yeah, they will den up for weeks at a time, especially pregnant females while they're, finishing.
Makes sense.
Finishing up with pregnancy and then delivering very early in the winter, they will den up, stick with the cubs for the first, few weeks and months. Mm-hmm. But they need to have that fat store present to be able to sustain themselves through the wintertime. So this is something that is going to have devastating effects across a number of different species of wildlife in Connecticut. We've seen what has happened, and we talked about this just a minute ago, and we talked about this before the show started, the emerald ash borer, the Asian longhorned beetle, the one that people talked about all over social media this summer was the lanternflies.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We have so many invasive species that are now causing significant detriment to, native plants in our ecosystem that we really need to look at. We really need to look at making sure that our legislation is keeping up with this. And that's how I'm going to tie this back around to state legislative policy. There are both federal acts and state legislation that not only provide funding for things like the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, which does a lot of the research on plant pathology and other issues dealing with Connecticut, but we also have to really understand that many of these invasive species are introduced because of human-mediated activities. So therefore, we have control over it. These are things that we need to put as a forefront in our Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to make sure that we are looking at issues such as this. And one of the big concerns with many of these invasive species is that we're seeing a significant portion coming from Asia. Okay. And a lot of it is because we're unregulated in not just products that are coming across that could be contaminated with either eggs or larvae from some of these insects. Usually you're finding this in a lot of the packaging material. So pallets that are made, crates, spools that are holding material that are being transported from Asia or Europe over to the United States. And whether those are adequately being assessed and evaluated for contamination or infection from or infestation from any of these type of invasives. But also we have to look at the not only nursery trade, but also the pet trade, because we do have a lot of, species that are coming over from other countries as live animals that can transport not only disease, but also...
As pets?
Well, I'll give you one example of something that's just starting to happen now in Connecticut. You've heard of the snakehead fish?
No.
You haven't?
No,
okay.
Please tell me more.
Okay. Snakehead fish is a very popular fish for consumption in Asia.
Okay.
One thing that's happened, and this was first recognized down in Florida, there was a high Asian population in this one area of Florida, and the snakehead fish was being introduced into small isolated ponds like on golf courses. People were coming back and fishing for these because each one of these fish can be $20 to $40 on an Asian fish market.
No kidding.
Yeah, and they are actually a very tasty fish.
Okay.
The problem is that the snakehead fish, one of the things that it is capable of is not only breathing through gills, but also surviving out of the water in very dry, muddy conditions. And certain types of snakehead fish can actually move themselves across short sections of land from one body of water to another. So they're prolific. Yes. Now, the other thing that's significant about these fish are that they protect their young. So both parents will hang around. There's very little opportunity for those young fry to be eaten by other fish. Very little natural predators for these fish. They are very aggressive, significant teeth, and those are starting to show up in Connecticut ponds and lakes.
Oh, man.
They've spread out, and they're in more than 24 states now that you can find these snakeheads. So, I mean, it's not just plants and wood products, stuff like that. But we have to be careful about what we're introducing in our environment that are now causing detrimental
'cause
issues
that's
here.
why
And
we
legislators,
live here.
and legislatively, these things are important. So I'm going to leave it with that. We have about 1 minute left. I'm going to provide you with a little bit of a preview for some upcoming episodes that we have here. We will have segments that are dedicated to some of our local politicians. We also have some state level candidates that I will be bringing in over the next few weeks. We will be discussing issues from elections and also increasing voter turnout, as we've been talking about a little bit today. We'll expand on that coming up. Thank you for tuning in to this Thursday, October 2nd episode of Right Now. I'm Chris Reddy with Curtis Eller. I hope you have a great afternoon and enjoy the Yankees-Red Sox game tonight.
Thank you.